you can just tell the audience who you are, what it is that you do.
Well, my name is Alex Davis. I'm a singer-songwriter from L.A. originally, born and raised, and I still live here. And I have been playing music since I was 8 years old. Actually, a lot before that. I started when I was 3, something, maybe 2, with my parents playing all of these instruments. We used to sing together. I think I started xylophone when I was a young child. I started playing guitar when I was 8, so that's why I usually say that, because I mostly play guitar now on stage. But I started playing piano when I was 6, and did a lot of piano and guitar until I was 12. I got my first band, a punk pop rock band. We played at a place called Dizzy Debbie's in L.A., which no longer exists, but it was really a lot of fun. I played drums for that band. And then I went on to kind of get into my own stuff. I was into Jeff Buckley for a while, really into Nirvana and Elliott Smith, and older stuff too that my mom got me into. Like I listened to records like Billy Joel and Bob Dylan and a bunch of psychedelic stuff like The Doors and, poetry. I did a lot of writing too. So pretty much always the way I expressed myself was through music and writing. And now I've been playing a bunch of years in L.A. around the local clubs. I've also gone to New York and did a one-man show there, working on a play that has musical, like a stage show, like stuff based on my life, my experience, my relationship with my girlfriend, and that's been a lot of fun, actually. So we're developing that right now in L.A. and potentially going to New York later in the fall. And right now I'm singing with the Airy Sisters as one project. That's fun. We do sort of a folk trio, and also Patty Carr. We do a show that she writes songs also. So we kind of split the set and sing for each other. I play guitar for her, and that's been a lot of fun because mixing audiences is really fun. Like her fans coming to my shows and my fans going to her shows, and that's also just the kind of singer-songwriter feel. So I'm really doing a lot of great stuff with music right now, stuff I'm excited about. Placing recordings on TV, and I had a new album out that I recorded with the Airy Sisters. And so I'm recording some new stuff now and doing the laundry.
Sounds good. I'm wondering if you could start with this idea of collaboration or collaborative work, the Airy Sisters, the album that, I think that's the most recent album that you had out, is this right?
That's right.
Okay. Who are the Airy Sisters? How did you come in contact with them?
As per usual in L.A., my experience is there's basically, I guess, 2 ways to find people to collaborate with. Maybe 3. Okay, so these are the 3 ways I've gone about it. Going to a show, seeing someone on stage, and liking the way they play and asking them. I've gotten a bassist that I worked with once that way. And then there's going on Craigslist, looking for people to play with. I'm looking for this sort of thing and, see who responds. And then there's word of mouth, and that's the one that mostly I've found people to work with that way, is friends of friends. And so the Airy Sisters, I started playing with one of them, Caitlin Airy. She's a friend of a friend. I met her and found out she sang a lot and was into musical theater, and I was like, okay, well, you want to sing backup with me once, try it out? And that was, let's just say we've been doing it for 3 years. And I had another backup I was singing with, Patty Carr, actually. She was singing with me at the time, and she's just a friend I've known for years around town, and, eventually she just started singing with me. And so Caitlin, I needed a new second backup singer because I do a lot of 3-part harmony and my songs and the covers that we do. So she was like, well, my sister can sing with us. So then Shannon Airy came on board and became Alex Davis and Airy Sisters a year ago.
Are there any challenges that you seem to run into? Is it something that you really enjoy versus solo work?
Yeah, that's it. It's a good question because I feel like the challenge I've come up with collaboration is scheduling, really, because until you are really, able to support yourself fully on music, and I'm doing well in that sense, but I still have to have other jobs that I do, and so does everybody else at this point. So scheduling and making time for it, that's really been the only challenge. Otherwise, as long as we're on the same page with what we want and the vision we have for the songs and, the kind of shows we want to put on, collaboration, I find, is really so important for me because I write songs on my own, certainly. Mm-hmm. I start songs, but I prefer to play with other people. I prefer a band feel where there's multiple instruments, multiple voices. I find that sort of like my experience kind of like drawing and painting. I've always done visual art as well, and I'm not really into monochromatic stuff. I mean, I like pen and ink, but it's that idea of like putting together multiple people's experiences and perspectives. I find just is really inspiring and creates a whole other experience for anybody listening to it. And, you know, I'm already playing guitar and singing, which adds two elements, but I just find that it's also really fun for me to
sure.
Work with other people, and that's why the two projects I'm working on now are very different. And I'm also, you know, writing myself. So at any point, you know, the other challenge is at any point, somebody in these collaborations could say, okay, I don't have any time for this now. I got to work on my solo career, because there are people who are doing their own thing also. So at that point, I'm still fine, you know. So I don't get too attached to the collaboration, but at any point, it's also like putting yourself out there in multiple ways. You have a greater chance of reaching more people and showing your versatility as an artist, and that you can do different things and you can work as a team. And I feel like it allows people to get to know you a little better also.
Does, in any way, whether implicitly or explicitly, do politics have a place in your music and the work that you do?
So I would say a fraction of the time.
Okay.
Because although I'm involved, you know, I'm interested in politics and I have plenty of opinions, I find that the best thing I can do is write about my human experience, just in my relationships and the social things I see in the world right now. Because I'm still sort of musically, I just find that being myself on stage and entertaining people is my place right now. And it may change, you know. I feel like I could write labor songs at some point, or anthems, you know, about being vegan. But I find that right now, you know, I have enough of that in my personal life that it's not what I want to do with my music.
The writing that I do personally is very much invested in that personal as being the political. It's just writing about and being invested in how you're experiencing life, how it is that you navigate life itself. And that in and of itself, I do believe, is inevitably and inherently political in some ways.
Totally. I agree, yeah.
I mean, not in that explicit I'm being political way so much as it's just the way that my life is. And yes, it's political.
Right, because you're making a statement about how you're allowed to be who you are. And you're giving other people the permission to be who you are, who they are.
I'm wondering, along the similar lines here, does gender figure into your work at all as well? And if so, like, how does that look, do you suppose, or not at all, perhaps?
Yeah, it doesn't. I wrote a couple of songs about being trans. One of them is on the EP right now. It's called Can't Fool Everybody, and that was kind of the only political song I wrote, even though it's in third person. It's not even exactly direct.
Yeah.
It is about that experience of coming to terms with who you are, about being, but I don't explicitly talk about gender even in it. It's just more about, there's a few buzzwords mentioned, and then it's about being part of a minority, basically, or part of a non-gender biased group of people. And then I wrote another one called Born Wrong, and that was really just about, you know, my experience of, you know, being in the wrong body. But I found later that even though that song was really important for me when I wrote it, when I started my transition, you know, I feel like I certainly was born in the wrong body. That there's no two ways about it. But it doesn't mean I'm wrong as a person or I'm bad as a person. And I feel like although a lot of people relate to that song, I don't want anybody to confuse that. You know, I feel like that it was misunderstood by a bunch of people, and a bunch of my songs may be misunderstood by people. I can't control that, but I just want to, more than talk about gender, really just present as the gender that I am and let people figure it out for themselves and think about other things. And it's kind of like what you said, by, you know, showing by example, sharing by example rather than by explanation.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I think that you said something similar along the lines when I'd seen you perform. This was a few years back at an MCC, Metropolitan Community Church, where an LA Pride gig for some of the queer youth, as I recall.
Totally, I remember doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know, I can't recall which song it was that you'd sang, but you were kind of speaking along these similar lines, and I can still remember some of that. It really stuck with me, I guess, over the years. And part of what my partner Aaron and I are really trying to accomplish with this radio show, Beyond the Binary, is, in one degree, featuring gender variant, sex variant folks that are engaged in some sort of arts. But in some ways, it's not always a very explicit part of what they do. So much as I think that your presence, at least in my view, I think that your presence allows a space for other people who might have similar experiences to be able to just be in the world as well, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, well, that's certainly what I hope will happen, because in some ways what I do for my career is purely selfish. Like, this is what I want to do with my life. This is what I, want my life to look like, is playing music and writing music and being in the entertainment industry in some capacity. That's how I want to make a living. But in another sense, I certainly want it to benefit other people. And I would love the world to change enough that there is no barrier, there's no more, prejudice or stereotype, there's more understanding, all of that. And if I can be a part of it, that's fantastic.
And I'm wondering if, my issue with the closet in general, in one way I think visibility is important. I also have another view completely that says, well, visibility has to be defined by the body, by the person. Do you ever get guilt or pushback from people that would prefer seeing you as more explicitly political than you are now? Does that ever seem to come up at all?
That's a great question. No, and probably the reason is because I don't actually talk to that many queer people on a regular basis.
Sure.
I mean, it's really like I have a bunch of friends that I have in LA and around the world, actually, that I've met through YouTube or I've met through other people. And I keep a relationship with those people. And they've never said to me, you should be doing more. I mean, the only thing because mostly I think a lot of the people that I relate to or who relate to me are people who don't necessarily want to live a life about being trans. It's like they realize it was something that happened to them. They were born this way, and they want to change their lives and live their lives. And, that's what I want to do. I just want to live my life as a man. That's just how I envision my life.
Sure. And
I do feel that maybe I think it's fine, and for people to understand that it's fine to take a break. You don't have to be an activist. It doesn't have to be an activist act. It's something you're doing for yourself so that you can be happy. Right. At some point, you could be working towards coming out, being visible, helping other people, but it's not something that has to happen right away. And a lot of people decide to be self, right? They decide to be self for the rest of their lives.
Right.
It's not something that they want to necessarily talk about or deal with. So I totally respect it. And, I do feel that I've been given opportunities. And sometimes when people give me opportunities and say, hey, can you do this? Can you be, because I did a piece for the Huffington Post with a friend of mine who is an activist and speaks out and stuff. Lauren Foster, she's a model, and she's a fantastic person, really vocal and really eloquent about trans issues. And, we were working on some stuff for GLAAD because they're kind of changing the way that they go about advocating for trans issues. And nothing has come together completely yet. It's in the development for the future, but I do feel that when I'm given opportunities like that, then I feel like people are saying, "Hey, you can do more."
Yeah.
But it's never given to me as a judgment.
Well, I think that's really great to hear. I mean, because I think in one way, succumbing to that type of pressure also kind of shows that there's apparently supposed to be a way to be queer, a way to be trans. As opposed to the various ways that we all kind of experience our lives. And frankly, that type of political activist work, while on one end I'm very much absolutely for it, on the other end I say, well, some bodies aren't able or equipped to engage in that type of work. Or maybe they're not in a safe enough space that they can engage in that type of work, or even frankly be out in ways that don't put them at risk in some way. So I really appreciate that. I'm wondering if we can talk a little bit about your ideal audiences. What does your audience look like, and what is your ideal audience? Or do you already have the ideal audience, perhaps? Maybe that's another question.
I would say my ideal audience is anybody who likes my music. Yeah. Anybody who's not holding up a picket sign. Even though I feel like if there were antagonists in my audience or hecklers or something that might be, provocative in a sense or inspiring, and I would want them there to see if I could change their mind, maybe.
Sure.
But I do feel like really across gender lines, across sexuality lines, across race lines, nationality lines, anything, anybody who enjoys my music and has a good time at my show or has a good time listening to my music and online and watching the vids, that is the audience I want to promote to. It's definitely I have a sort of crossover perspective.
Before I say goodbye here, I wonder if there was anything that you wanted to add or anything that you were dying to say to the audience out there that we haven't covered so far.
What am I dying to say? Hey, I'd love to say thank you. I do feel like, even though I always thought it was cliche that artists thank their audiences and say they love them, and if it wasn't for you, I'd be nowhere, when it's like really kind of thought that that's how artists were. But I just really, I have a different perspective now, because if people online weren't watching my videos and there wasn't word of mouth around town of people sharing my music and all of that, I wouldn't have a career, I wouldn't have anybody interested in listening, and I have such fun. It's such a fun time meeting anybody who's interested in my music, and it's really, I'm in a great position. So I really do appreciate all of you listening and all of you keeping up with what I'm doing, and I hope to meet everyone soon, someday.
All right, Alex, well, I thank you very much for your time. I do appreciate everything that we've said in this dialogue. I really do.
Thanks, Benny. Really, it was great. I think what you're doing is really cool.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you.